Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Thursday. Last week, during Dev Diary 123, we had a bit of an incident. You see, despite it being one of the very best patch rollouts that we've seen, actually just the best patch rollout we've seen, we were not wished a happy Thursday. And I had said, they're obviously taking the happy from this Thursday, doubling it, and sending it to the next Thursday. Clearly, that's the only explanation. And some of you said, that's not possible. You can't send happy from one Thursday to the next. And then some of you were also hitting us with these insane takes like, you know, the devs are only asking if they can send the happy, not if they should send the happy. Crazy. But today we see the double happy Thursday. It was doubled from last week and sent to this week, and we see the full double happy Thursday as promised last week. That's right, that's exactly what was promised. The double happy Thursday was promised. Everything that follows after this comma, that's not what was really promised. This was truly the prince that was promised, the double happy Thursday. And not only do we have a double happy Thursday, everyone knows that happy salutation belongs in sandwich format, with the happy at the beginning and at the end, and we of course do see a happy Thursday at the end. We can proclaim victory, we have succeeded, we've gotten a double happy Thursday along with a happy sandwich, and so, you know, I think we're done here. Everyone. What do you mean I still have to make the video? We won. We achieved victory. What are you talking? Oh, fine. Okay, we are going to do a rundown of Dev Diary 124 as well, and also take a look at the hotfix of 1.7.3. The small hotfix. I thought that this was the big hotfix. We're also going to take a look at 1.7.2 hotfix, and the 1.7.3 hotfix today. Taking a look at those in addition to Dev Diary 124. But the important thing here is a double happy Thursday. Incidentally, of much less importance, it's also the 4th of July, which some of you know is Independence Day for the United States. So to all of my fellow Americans out there and the British, I would like to wish you a happy 4th of July. Shout out to you guys. Okay, so let's kind of get into it then. Dev Diary 124, double happy Thursday. As promised last week, today we'll be returning to the future update plans, which we last touched on in Dev Diary 102, sorry, not 122. Just like the previous times, we'll be going over what changes and improvements we had planned for the game in the future free updates, such as 1.8 and 9 and beyond. These are both free updates, I take it, so it will be 1.10 is going to be the next DLC, maybe? But okay, let's continue on. Once again, I'm asking for your help. Okay, once again, we will be talking about the same key 4 improvements areas of military, historical immersion, diplomacy, internal politics, as well as other, my favorite. For anything that falls outside these 4 categories, just as before, I'll be aiming to give you an updated view of where we stand and where we're heading by going through each of these 4 categories and marking on each of these with below statuses done. This part of the game we now consider to be in good shape. Something can be done, of course, doesn't mean that we're never going to expand on it or improve in the future, just that it's no longer a high priority for us. Any points that are already marked and done in previous updates will now be removed from the list. Thank you. Although it's probably worth it to go back every now and again to see what all has changed, to avoid growing unmanageably long. Yeah, exactly. But you can look at the older Dev Diaries, 79, 89, and 102 if you're interested in what was done previously. We have updated this part of the game. We've made some improvements and changes that we want to make, but not yet satisfied with where it stands, and plan to make further updates, plan to make further improvements to it in future updates, such as 1.8, 1.9, and so on. Mostly and so on. Note that this section will mainly focus on 1.6 and 1.7. Not updated, which, okay, this is intuitive. New, this is also intuitive. Reconsidered, aka redacted. This is a previously planned change or improvement that we've reconsidered our approach to how to tackle it from the previous updates. For these points, we will explain what our new plans are and change the list appropriately in the future. I don't think any had a reconsider in this one, but we do have this nice little, and again, I really love what the artist put together for this. Just for a final bit of repetition, just just as a final bit of just before, we will only be talking about improvements, changes, and new features that are fundamentally as part of the free updates in the dev diary. I will also remind you that this is not an exhaustive list of the things we are going to do, and that something being done doesn't mean we're not going to bug fix, balance, or basically this is a disclaimer that you guys can kind of intuitively figure out to prevent the people from complaining about kind of silly stuff on the forums. But little do the devs know that people are going to complain about silly stuff no matter what, and legitimate stuff as well, but, you know, also silly stuff. So, we see the future update plans. And we are going to be going through these. I really love the UI here, but we're going to be going through these in the dev diary. They are going to be talking about all of these, in terms of each of these. So, like, we see military making navies more important. We're going to be reading through it anyways because we do see it here, but I absolutely do love kind of the look and feel of these. So just a very well put together infographic. Subject to additional change, not an exhaustive list. You have to qualify your statements as much as possible. No. Okay. Except you do. So, moving on. For military, making navies more important for projecting global power and securing control of coasts. This was something that I found very interesting in a book I read on the Industrial Revolution, how Great Britain initially started out, producing a ton of the goods, and then eventually transitioned to mainly most of its economic activity that was kind of exported was actually freight to other countries, which was the result of its huge power projection in terms of the Navy. I think that this makes sense, but also adding a system where you actually keep track of the boats. Having the ships be a good is kind of a weird sort of phenomenon. Adding a proper system of military access and finding solutions for other remaining rough edges in the frontline system. There's never not been issues. For those of you for people who are new and coming into the game, I just want to assure you that the frontline system used to be so much worse. There used to be just absolutely insane splitting, and it has improved a ton, but there is, of course, still problems. Generals getting teleported, this type of thing, but not anywhere. You still have the Shadow Realm issue, but not anything where it used to be before, anything like that. For not updated, we see turning individual ships into proper pieces of military hardware that can be built, sunk, and repaired rather than just being manpower packages. Yeah, right now the problem is you don't actually build boats and care about the boats, you just build the good, and the good allows the building to employ up. And it consumes goods in the exact same way a barracks does, but that doesn't really fit for ships, right? Ships are important pieces of military equipment, and it should be way more expensive to build the ships than to maintain the ships, and this should be felt and your ships should also go obsolete, and so refitting the ships should be a substantive cost as well, and all these types of things, and this just isn't the case, and I think that Navy should, the economics behind the production and the floating. It's not fielding. You don't put boats in a field, but the cost of putting out a whole bunch of ships should be something that is deeply like an economic feel, and I think that it's important for this era. And while I'm not like a hyper expert on this Navy stuff, all the people who make complaints of this sort makes sense. These are not the people who make complaints of the sort that this is caveating, but I think that there's a substantive. Adding a system for limited wars to reduce the number of early game global wars between great powers. I feel like, is this really a problem? See, there's the thing is like, if you were actually having human players try to play optimize, the GPs would absolutely fight really aggressively from day one over stuff, because whatever GP has the largest military should be going after the biggest prizes in terms of expansion, but I don't think that this is thematic, and what we want to see from what we want to hear from the loud cars outside is this slow expansion of tension, and so maybe some sort of tension system, like is in Hoi, but I don't really know, in order to prevent these early game global wars between great powers. For historical immersion, done. Ensuring unification such as Italy, Germany, and Canada don't constantly happen decades ahead of historical schedule, and increasing the challenge of unifying Italy and Germany in particular. This one's a rough one to do, in that you don't want it to be early, but you want it to still happen, and so this adds a little bit of difficulty, but, some people complain a lot that Germany never forms. I saw this complaint quite a bit from some of the people who had early access to the game, but I was finding in my games that Germany was forming fairly consistently. I think the problem is that if Russia sides with Austria against Prussia, which is less of a thing, which we will see in the 1.2 kind of update, but if Russia sides with Prussia, or sides with Austria, then like Germany doesn't form, and if this is not the case, Germany consistently forms. But okay, aside from the AI challenges when it comes to forming Germany, Italy, we are now relatively happy with the state of unifications. There are certainly ways to improve the unifications in the future, particularly in tying them much closer to a political system, but that falls outside the scope of this particular point. Okay. General tweaks to AI to have AI countries play in a more believable, immersive way. I think that this is one of the best improvements of 1.7, and it's like it's an improvement that's really subtle, but the AI is like behaving, and I've said it quite a few times, so you guys might be getting old of it, but the AI is behaving in a much less psychotic way, in that it is just like rolling a dice and kind of randomly doing stuff and just being randomly aggressive, and instead it's much more aggressive, but it's aggressive in a way that is consistent with kind of historically what has happened to the AI, and this is being brought forth using the mechanics of catalysts, where if you damage relations below a certain level, this will hit a catalyst, which is going to be more likely to change their attitude and spawn a lobby. And if you change attitude and then spawn a lobby, or you change some of the factors that influence attitude, you're going to have a bit of a time. So going over 25, like Infamy, for example, creates a catalyst for everyone. I think it's everyone who shares a diplomatic interest with you, which should be most of the world for most of your games. And so it's really bad to go over. It's so much worse to go over 25 Infamy now from a diplomatic perspective, because this is going to make the AI way more aggressive towards you. It can turn AI that has been historically friendly against you just as a result of you going over 25 Infamy. So it's considerably worse to do that now than it used to be. But we have, with the introduction of diplomatic catalysts and the various AI improvements of 1.7, we now consider this to be done, though in reality, this is the sort of point that is never going to stop seeing improvements from our end. Perfect. We have updated, tweaking content such as the Meiji Restoration, Alaska Purchase, and so on in such a way that they can more frequently be successfully performed by the AI through a mix of AI improvements and constant tweaks. After the release of 1.7.2, we consider this to be almost there, but we need a little bit more work. Right now, I haven't touched Japan in a while, and there's a reason for that, because everyone else is touching Japan. The AI is a bit more aggressive, and they're really aggressive towards Japan, making Japan not that friendly, I think, to play, but maybe we'll give it a shot. I think it's going to be a little bit rough, but playing an unrecognized power is now a little bit better now than it was on release of 1.7.2, so maybe we take a look at something like that. Been considering doing a Jewish Japan run, so that would be, of course, you would need to mod to make that happen. You would need to mod or jump through a lot of hoops. A lot of hoops. You would probably need to, if you weren't going to do that, you'd probably need to start off as someone like France, conquer Palestine, release Israel after researching pan-nationalism, then as Israel, conquer Japan, then play release as Japan, would be, I think, how you would do it. Or you would have to play as Japan, convert Japan, reconquer Japan, play release as Japan, but I don't know if they even keep their faith after you've converted them, and you would have to convert them through the new power block. So that would be quite a task to do, just to get to that point. But going through the base game, journal entries and events, making improvements and additions to ensure that they feel meaningful or impactful for players to interact with. yeah, I think that this does need some work. We've made a number of changes and improvements to older journal entries in 1.6.7, such as the addition of scripted progress bars, but we still have more work to do here. Yep, that seems fair. Adding more country, state, and region-specific content to enhance the flavor of different countries. I think they've been doing this slowly. Notably, whenever they kind of go over an area and reevaluate the resources, they really seem to add quite a lot of resources. Like Persia got a ton more resources. South America got quite a bit, not as much as Persia did. And now with this update that we see in 1.7, Russia's got a ton more resources. Specifically, Baku apparently has. I haven't seen it in its full glory, but apparently there's 240 oil there, which is literal 3x what was previously the highest oil state in the game, which was the Trucial Coast, which is split between Bahrain and the Trucial Coast, but there was 80 oil there. And now there's some other state with 120, but Baku has 240, which is insane. As before, this is something that we're simply going to keep adding every single update, and it's never going to really be done. For now, I'm leaving this here to mark that this is still one of our top priorities. Okay, I imagine they will do this every time there is a regional update. They will reevaluate their resources in that specific region, and I'm really hoping for an Australia one. Australia is just like the... well, I think that arable land should be, like, separated from, like, migration and population considerations, and that's an entire another discussion. But Australia really just doesn't have anywhere near the arable land it should. It has, like, 80 arable land total, and it's, like, the size of the USA, and I recognize that there's less arable land per acre in Australia than there is in the USA by a considerable margin, but it's also, like, Nebraska alone, I don't think should have more arable land than all of Australia. So, diplomacy. Improving... it might be more than 80, but I think my point still stands. Diplomacy. So, for done, improving and expanding the interactions with and from subjects, such as being able to grant and ask for more autonomy through diplomatic actions. This has been done. I think playing as a subject is a lot more interesting now, and you aren't just, like, fully locked into either independence war or nothing, and there's a little bit more playability, but still, you're also still a subject. Have an interest group weigh in on diplomacy, for example, having armed forces disapprove an alliance with a country that recently took a land from you due to revanchism. We do have lobbies. Specifically, lobbies are actually a great way to get approval, which is kind of pairs nicely with the increased radicalism, because it's a lot harder to get overall IG approval, because you will have a lot of IGs more radical now because they sharply increased radicalism in 1.7, and so you can kind of offset it to some degree with interest groups, and over the course of time you can actually kind of massage everyone into one interest group, especially anti-country lobbies, and so you can kind of pick one enemy, and this is maybe a way you want to play, one rival over the course of a run that you are just going to repeatedly attack and beat down and this type of things, so that you can keep the lobby happy. Foreign investment and some form of construction in other countries, at least if they're part of your market, we do see that. With of course, the heavy caveat, if they're part of your market, foreign investment in the free patches is only in subject countries, I believe. You do have to buy a sphere of influence to get it get the agreement, I believe. Not updated. Make declaring and holding on to diplomatic interests more rewarding and challenging aspect of global empire building. Currently, it's actually very rewarding in the sense that you get more opportunities for reverse sways, but reverse sways were considerably nerfed in 1.7. Still really, really strong, but they were you getting more opportunities for it isn't quite as good. But yeah, currently it doesn't feel like a mechanic that's too important overall, other than it just allows you to get involved in diplomatic plays in the region. And so, yeah, I definitely think that they could improve it. I wonder if they're going to draw a distinction between diplomatic interests gained by an interest and diplomatic interests gained by having a state or a subject with a state in the area. I think that I would like to see a distinction where one, you are trying to influence the area, and the other, you just happen to be there to be subjected to influence. And also, like, there's, like, weird things like the UK having an interest everywhere means that you generally, improving relations with the UK is harder, because anytime you do anything in a diplomatic region where someone else has an interest, you get half the infamy as a hit to relations. So you get hit to the relations with the UK more than any other country, which is, I don't know how I feel about that. I think that that's kind of an oversimplified way of like kind of going about things. So I'd like to see that changed, but I don't have a solution to offer. Allowing peace deals to be negotiated during a diplomatic play instead of only having the option to give in. This is the like kind of only thing that I have for a long time complained about that I think is still not very good, which is I think the diplomatic play mechanic is just not very good and doesn't seem like a diplomatic play. Instead, it just kind of seems like a delayed declare of war, although they have improved it a lot more. They've made it a lot more transparent who's planning on joining, who's thinking of joining. I still want to be able to ask permission from a GP to do something and have their assurance that they won't thumb my pie. And I think that this would make sense as a mechanic. And also being able to back down from a play or to negotiate a GP out of a play. Like, there are times where a GP gets swayed into the other side for something that I would just be totally willing to give them, but I couldn't sway them onto my side for that thing. I couldn't just give away that thing for free. And now that they're against me, I can't just give away what they wanted for free just to get them out of the play. And that's kind of frustrating. And the fact that you can only back down and give up 10% of your income just like feels super bad as a mechanic. And the diplomatic play, I think the entire idea is that that there's this jockeying situation and there's this game that gets played before wars, but it's really not a game. It's like this timer where chaos can happen before you get your war. Internal politics, we have adding laws that expand on diversity of countries and introduce new ways to play the game. Similar to the point for region-specific flavor, this is something that will never really be done, but remains here to highlight that we still consider it an important priority. Okay. Fair enough. Not updated. Turn legitimacy into something, into a more interesting mechanic, where the strength of government depends on the successes and failures, and a highly legitimate government can't simply be ousted at a whim, but would need to be undermined first. This is a bit of an interesting one. I assume this is kind of going to function a little bit like lobbies, but in the sense that if you're continuously successful, it's going to be harder to oust who's in charge, which is going to be either good or bad. Like, if you're still trying to liberalize, this will be bad for you. If you're already kind of got what you want and who you want to charge, this is going to be good for you. And there are also maybe ways where you can intentionally lose wars to like delegitimize your government or intentionally make concessions. So it's going to be hard to balance any type of mechanic like this, but okay. Introduce the concept of national pride. So this is exciting to me as something that they want to do, because I would really like an underlying cultural system. Been super excited reading about EU5 or Project Teaser, where they have like a type of cultural system with stuff like offense versus defense, and innovativeness versus whatever it is, and all these types of things that you are trending towards, that kind of underlie the spirit of your nation and this type of thing. And I wish there was a little bit more of something cultural in Victoria 3, but this concept of national pride is an indication that this is maybe something on their radar, which can increase or decrease depending on a country's actions, and which ties directly into its legitimacy. Okay, fair enough. This is probably going to further nerf the high tax meta, both of these things, which it currently is maybe not even the way you do things anymore, because the doubled radicalism and the doubled hit to legitimacy. But okay. Have discrimination not be a purely binary status, please, and reflect forms of discrimination aside from what's written in the law, as well as making assimilation something more meaningful mechanic in the process. Currently, the main function of assimilation is just improving your computer's performance, because you can only assimilate pops you accept anyways. To be fair, it's a little bit more than that. Assimilation does help the petite bourgeoisie become stronger, because pops can only join the petite bourgeoisie if they're primary culture. So if they're accepted but not primary, they can't join the PB. So technically it helps out the PB, but like, which like to me is kind of strange as well. But currently it's like functionally not a useful mechanic, and nor is it interesting, and you never play for it. Except for improving performance. New, find a better solution to make ideologies appear, attract followers, and create support for the reforms for current RNG-heavy leader ideology system. Well, so it's kind of RNG-heavy, but it just involves rolling a bunch of generals, searching for the ideology you want, and then exiling the IG leader. This is currently how you force whatever ideology you need to pass laws. I mean, the biggest thing here is that people want to pass multiculturalism, and multiculturalism used to be supported by some base ideologies, and now they're only supported by specific leader ideologies, and so to a lesser extent, this is also true with Council Republic, and so this would be less of a problem for players if they just didn't make multiculturalism so hard to pass in the first place, which I think they kind of do for performance reasons, but yeah, I mean, the system should be a little bit more than, like, intentionally rolling through, like, 50 generals, looking for the perfect general who's both popular and the ideology you want so that you can force the ideology. It's just kind of a weird play pattern that I don't like very much, but it's, like, the only way to consistently, like, get something like multiculturalism. You can do other stuff like intentionally put in everything the humanitarians hate as your laws, which makes them more likely to spawn, but okay. And then we have other, my favorite, etc. Mostly etc. Not updated, improve on companies by turning them into actual actors in your country that can own, expand buildings, and interact with other characters in politics. This will be super cool if they're if they're kind of like a lobby, but they're led by an individual who is the CEO of the company, and if they, instead of having financial districts, and just financial districts alone, you can get a specific company's headquartered in a given state. So, like, let's say Ford Motor Company headquarters in Pennsylvania or New York or wherever. I actually don't know where they were initially headquartered, but now they can buy a bunch of different things, and then they collect, more money, and the more money they have, the more clout they have, this type of thing, or the more they influence things, and they can lobby the government, and these types of things would be very, very cool. Find a way to deal with the excessive fiddliness of the trade system in large economies, possibly allowing for autonomous trade based on your laws in a way similar to autonomous investment system. This one, I think, would probably be good. I would like to be able to just set heuristics for instituting trade routes. Just be able to set rules, because I know exactly what I want to do with trade, just generally speaking. I would like to just be able to set rules, put rules in place, and then just have an autonomous thing, just go for those rules. But okay. As always, I cannot make any specific promises about these things, about when these things will be coming. Of course, we cannot promise anything and then not deliver, otherwise everyone will be big mad. However, I can tell you that the next update will be a happy one. 1.8 will be a standalone free update that should knock a point or two off this list, but will be mainly focused on bug fixing, general polish, and more AI improvements. Before then, we also have at least one more hotfix, 1.7.4, planned to address the remaining high priority issues from the 1.7 release, tentatively planned for next week, and part of the team will continue working for a few more weeks, like I mentioned in last week's Dev Diary. Yeah, so currently, for those of you who don't know, part of the team is on vacation and part of the team is still working, and so they're taking like a staggered vacation, and some of them will come back while the other ones go on vacation. And they did this because 1.7 was pushed back, basically till right before the vacation period, and so a few of them stayed on so that they can work on hotfixing the game after release. Right, but that's all for this time, and all for this side of summer. No, you mean no more Happy Thursdays? What? And all for this side of summer, so Dev Diaries will return on August 15th, not like this. This is the worst of news. We started out with the best of news, and then we got the worst of news. No Happy Thursdays until August 15th. But I can wish you many a happy Thursday in the sun. Okay, this is many. This is more than double. Maybe this is a consolation prize, or possibly snow if you happen to live in the southern hemisphere. It do be like that sometimes. Regardless, I hope you have a great July. Remember, happy 4th of July to the Americans and British out there. Now, let us kind of go over the hotfixes, which, to be fair, there's a lot in here. So we're going to actually go over the more recent hotfix just kind of quickly, because hotfix 1.7.3 is very short. Hello, Victorians. We have a small hotfix today. Okay. Fixing 3 key issues before a larger hotfix next week. What we've been saying is that in 1.7.3, for the number of fixes changes will now be 1.7.4. Makes sense. I'm glad they edited that in this. I think when I read this last night, which was a happy Wednesday, this said 1.7.3. But as always, this post is not for bug reports. Please post them, etc. The following, etc., relative to 1.7.2. Okay, fix an issue where privatization was not correctly checked sometimes, resulting in money being spent to privatize levels that were already privatized. That seems bad. Currently, my understanding is there's a laissez-faire fix. Or a laissez-faire bug, and someone's posted a laissez-faire fix mod because the private buildings are not, or the private queue is not buying, it's not buying buildings correctly, and so there's a fix for that. You can look into the details on that as well. Fixed a rare out of sync caused by unsorted collecting from an unordered map. Unordered map, okay. Fixed a major issue that would prevent upgrading power block principles under some circumstances. That does seem like a major issue. And now let's take a look at 1.7.2. Good day, valiant Victorians. Ooh, alliteration. We do love it. We love to see it. We have just released a hotfix for 1.7.2. Checksum 0942, containing a wide variety of fixes, improvements, balance changes, and more. As always, this post is for bug reports, or as always, this post is not for bug reports. Whoops. Please report where there's bugs, where the bugs belong. Okay. So, we have patch notes, and this is pretty long, but we're going to go through all of it. Except for the bug fixes, I don't know if we're going to go through every single bug fix, but their bugs have been fixed. Add in an event for Persia or Afghanistan winning the Great Game. Makes sense. Britain and France are no longer allied at starts, or sorry, no longer rivaled at starts, as this doesn't accurately reflect their relations in 1836. This is going to be a buff towards both of them, and also going to make it easier to stay friendly with both of them, which is definitely something you want to do because they've been interested in a lot of regions. Austria, Prussia, and Russia now start the game with friendly attitudes towards each other to represent the historical Holy Alliance. This might actually make things starter. We're currently doing a Krakow run. We were doing the Krakow run before this, and this might make the start for Krakow harder. I imagine Prussia turns on Austria once they research nationalism, because you still need to do that war, and the AI is scripted to like really like trying to do German unification. So I assume that's still your way out, but this kind of changes things a little bit. Added a rivalry between Brazil and Argentina at game start. Added a rivalry between Britain and Russia at game start. This like really should have been the case. I had played the Russia on 1.7, kind of one of the earlier patches, 1.7.1 or 1.7.0. We played Russia on stream, and then we just got friendly with the UK basically the entire run. The initial major restoration journal entry is a lot easier to complete and simply requires keeping the shogunate out of power while maintaining at least middling legitimacy for 10 years, but has failed if the shogunate gets back into government. This last part's going to be frustrating if you like forget and you accidentally put them back in. The imposed state religion power block now also converts 2% of the population in a non-capital state. This is very good. This is very important. The fact that you, when you impose a religion, so the way conversion works is there's 0 people of a particular religion in a country or in a state. Pops will not convert even if that is your religion. If you don't have, what you would have to do is you'd have to find a way to get pops of that religion into all of your states so you can seed the religion so the religion can start growing. What this 2% conversion does is it seeds the religion by converting 2% of the pops. Advanced research, colonial offices, and police coordination now allow block leaders to impose their law in the education system, colonization, and policing groups respectively. I don't think that this is too big a deal, although we do kind of like it for education specifically, because if you impose education, you can generally as pops get more literate, they get more liberal, and so this will help for imposing liberal sorts of stuff onto your subjects, and also help them get more tech. Advanced research, colonial offices, and police coordination now disallow members from having the base laws in the respective group. No schools. Ooh, you can't have the no schools. Interesting. I wonder what happens if you go advanced research and you currently have no schools. I guess you probably can't. It just wouldn't automatically give you a school, but that's interesting. Added dynamic Boolean modifiers for disallowing specific laws. Okay. Advanced research, colonial offices, and coordination now reduce their respective institution costs by 10, 25, 50, and increase changing speed by 25, 40, 50. This I don't think is where most of the value of the principles are, but okay. I don't even know if this is a buff or a nerf, to the extent that when we're evaluating principles, we're not like looking at this, but Okay. Advanced research now has plus 5% tech spread as a school's institution modifier instead of a flat modifier, so you can get up to plus 25%. I didn't think that this principal group was super OP. A lot of viewers did think it's OP. My sample size is sufficiently small that the viewers are probably right in this regard, or I'm probably mistaken about how strong it is, but it does seem like it overall got nerfed over the next few points. Added research 3 has minus 5 ahead of time penalty as schools instead of flat value. And advanced research now increases the 3 now has an increase to 15 to weekly innovation cap as a school's institution modifier instead of a flat. Well, that seems like a buff, because now I think that before it was only adding 25 to the innovation cap, and now if you have it at max level, it's going to add 75. So overall, that might be a bit of a buff, actually. It just requires you to have all the levels of education. Okay, so fair enough. It got buffed, it seems. I don't think it's... I think that makes it considerably better, but I'm not sure. The entire point is to really abuse it, you have to really go do stuff ahead of time. And maybe just using advanced research and rushing tanks and then swapping off of advanced research is actually, like, hyper meta. That actually seems like it'd be pretty good, but just not my style of play. Because you get rid of the penalty, you get a bunch of extra progress. Not even something like tanks, just like squad infantry. If you get squad infantry in like the 1880s or something, you're just gonna run over people. It allows you to create really gross asymmetries, and then you just swap off of the research and go something else, and then catch up in the other areas. Something. Police Coordination 2 now reduces political movement radicalism on... The thing is that the ahead of time thing is the really critical thing for advanced research that makes it useful, because if it's just giving more innovation and just giving more tech spread, and rather than these ahead of time penalty and the ahead of time innovation cap, you could just build more universities to compensate, but you can't build more universities to increase your cap or to get rid of the... Well, you can kind of you can't do it to get rid of the ahead of time penalty. So, Police Coordination 2 now reduces political movement radicalism on the police institution instead of giving authority. The authority that it gave wasn't as good as vassalization and decreased political movement radicalism. The thing is right now radicalism isn't as bad because the abdication is so strong, and so they have to nerf abdication for modifiers like this to be particularly useful. But if they do nerf abdication or just completely removed it, then you'd actually want a lot of modifiers for managing radicalism, I think. And so this would maybe be more useful. Colonial offices 3 now adds 7% to infamy generation against unrecognized countries to the colonization institution. So now rather than getting minus 50% super early, you can get minus 49%, but it requires you to research malaria. So this is a nerf. I do think that this was one of the stronger principal groups, and so this nerf seems kind of fine to me. Choosing to leave a power block now results in a relations hits and a negative catalyst with other members. This makes sense. Liberty Desire now displays the war goals that they unlock. Unrecognized major powers can now form power blocks, but will suffer greater relations hits with recognized power block leader when doing so, and will only gain leverage over recognized countries at 10% of the normal rate. This seems fine. Added a check. It seems good, actually. Added a check for establishing trade agreement pact that can only be actually researched by your country. This will prevent lobbies from requesting the signature of a trade agreement which you could not fulfill. Okay, this is nice. Added a port to Chaozhou so that Hong Kong starts with a treaty port when taken as a treaty port. It seems that it seems that the UK almost always just goes for Chaozhou now, which means you could probably cheese that war also just by releasing them, which isn't something we've done too often. But if you're having a really huge amount of trouble, you could just release UA in response to the UK going for you, and this just bricks their war goal. If I recall correctly, you can still release that war. Maybe you can't anymore. Change Hokkaido to have subsistent pasture instead of rice farms to more accurately reflect its initial Ainu majority. I think this is a nerf because subsistence rice farms have more potential unless they doubled the arable land as well. I imagine they did not double the arable land, so this is kind of a nerf to your ability to get migration there, but okay, it seems fine enough. Adding missing localization for power block identity requirements for production methods. So I think that this was, you need like vacuum canning to unlock the food the final food PM that you get from the food principle, and I think it wasn't showing up, and now it shows up. Restorative asceticism is one of the Chinese devout IG traits. Okay, it was it was taken to be like it was just copy paste of Catholics, so now it's probably giving the authority plus asceticism, which seems fine. Added the concept unrecognized. I mean, they nerfed asceticism into the ground. I think it used to give like 50% and now it gives like 15% or something like this. Added the concept of unrecognized major power in all languages. Okay. Added and tweaked, so now we're looking at AI. Added and tweaked many starting attitudes and relations of AI countries to better reflect the diplomatic situation of 1836 or encourage more historically plausible outcomes. Again, you do have the problem of railroading versus sandboxing. Increase the AI tendency to build gold mines. Yeah, they wouldn't touch those anywhere near as much as you should. Like, you really just should blast them. There's a gold mines nerf in here, but even with the nerf, they're still insane. AI recognized powers are now more aggressive against unrecognized powers when they have a civilizing mission and or colonial offices principle. This makes sense. Unrecognized powers are generally more aggressive towards each other, particularly in Africa. Makes sense. Ethiopian princes and Chinese warlord states will now make more concerted efforts to unify. We love to see it. Greece now more aggressively pursues Greek nationalism, journal entry when it has claims. Okay. East India Company is now less gung-ho about conquering Tibet, free Tibet, and more inclined to conquer its neighbors of India and Burma. Oh no. AI now has a stronger tendency to abolish slavery after human rights is researches. Cool little bit of flavor. Great powers now have a greater tendency, as a great power does tend to have greater tendencies, to get involved in the early Ottomans versus Egypt disputes. We've just seen, so far of what I've seen in 1.7, Egypt just 100% collapse Ottomans, which I think is what would have happened historically had there not been intervention. And so this makes sense. USA and Britain now tend to seek to befriend each other when trying to resolve the Oregon border dispute, which is bad if you're playing Canada. France now sometimes chooses not to pursue the natural borders journal entry when given the option. I think, yeah, we've seen them always do it, which has turned Belgium into a really nice beginner nation into like a little bit scary. Fixed a bug where the AI was too eager to grab treaty ports in places where they actually had no interest in a treaty port. Okay. The U.S. now more aggressively targets states held by Mexico that directly border it, such as Colorado. So we won't see the Colorado border gore, but man, in one of my games I saw a very recent border gore. Mexico randomly took Georgia. So it was perfect U.S. borders, except Oklahoma was independent and native, and Georgia. And that's actually probably the most disgusting U.S. border gore I've seen in a while, because they're just random Georgia just being Mexican is just wild. Fix some issues with new attitude-changing system that caused the AI to not open up Japan. I guess, okay, interesting. Japan seems spooky as hell to play now. The AI now focuses more on befriending great powers when on track to complete earning recognition. Makes sense. Added the bespoke strategy and make AI ways for Japan to try to complete the Meiji Restoration. So we're going to see the AI do the Meiji Restoration better, we hope. Fixed an issue where AIs would adopt a domineering attitude and not actually act on it, do this strategy score calculation, not resulting in them wanting any war goals. Okay. Made the AI more restrictive about mixing generally incompatible war goals such as investment rights and subjugation. That makes sense. AI no longer has increased neutrality score in civil wars where they have a truce with the country having the civil war. Where they have a truce with the country having the civil war no longer has an increased neutrality score in civil wars where they have truce with the country that is having a civil war. I'm not even sure exactly what this means. Okay, the AI is less inclined to get involved in the German leadership war so long as neither sides are demanding territory, which they always do, in which case they will have increased support for the non-expansionist party. But we have the second one where AI will now be more restrained with what war goals they add with unification or unification leadership play if they are a primary participant. So this is really important because what would happen is that Prussia would deck Austria. They'd put in a bunch of war goals, and these war goals would cause everyone's attitude to shift negatively, and a bunch of powers would go from not really caring about this sort of conflict to really caring, and so it created this like strangeness that I'm sure is exacerbated by the catalyst mechanic, Prussia would get dogpiled after decking Austria, because Prussia would put in all of their war goals first, and so they would ruin the attitudes first, whereas Austria, as the defender, would put them in second, which is kind of a very strange sort of thing making it matter in that way. And so what the player would do is the player would deck on Austria and basically ask for no territory. To be fair, the player is planning on forming Super Germany, so that's a little bit of a different thing, and that's really why you would never ask for any territory. But okay. Add a callus for gaining and losing land borders with country to use to make AI more belligerent while gaining borders with unrecognized powers. Okay. AI now scales its minimum mobilization level by the number of small conflicts it's involved in, so that it's better at dealing with simultaneous revolts and subjects. AI is kind of bad at managing little wars sometimes. Added plus 50 AI acceptance, a bonus to investment rights proposals of the target country if they've recently declared a bankruptcy. So currently, right now, you don't want to invest unless they fix the construction thing too. This also means that AI countries that who had to declare bankruptcy will be more likely to offer up countries to invest in their country. Currently, if they have the bankruptcy, though, they get these local huge construction malice, and you don't even want to build in them anyways. Although you wouldn't mind buying their buildings. So I don't know if they fix that alongside this. Like, also your private queue can just get completely gummed up by their buildings. So if your private queue wants to build in, let's say, Spain, but Spain has a minus 90, Spain is not yet bankrupt, but then they get bankrupt and then they have a minus 95% construction penalty, and you have a bunch of buildings in your private queue, they can't get canceled, and they're just kind of locked in on the Spanish territory for forever because it's taking 20 times as long to construct the building. It's a little bit of a vibe, but the construction efficiency is a local thing, so if someone goes bankrupt, they do have the local malice applied to all their states. So unless they've changed this, how this operates, you would not want to. This is a trap. You do not want to invest in foreign countries that are bankrupt because your construction will not be very efficient. Fixed a bug where the AI would not properly build up its military forces due to incorrect logic when validating its spending. Yep. So now they're going to actually build military in addition to being hyper-aggressive. Subjects with a defiant or rebellious attitude towards their overlord now get appropriate acceptance bonus when asked to support the independence of fellow subjects. Perfect. Fixed a bug where some larger countries, such as Occitania, would become independent when released as a subject. I think this has to do with like, if you're a major power and you release a major power, it creates a problem. Fixed a bug where the AI of newly released countries was not properly initialized, causing issues such as no autonomous investment happening. Yikes. Okay. Ugh. Improved frame rate when scrolling in the building registry. Thank you. And then we have a bunch of balance changes here as well. The Ottomans now get an increase to intelligentsia approval and clout when pursuing Tanzimat. Reduce the required army size to complete Tanzimat from 150 to 100. I think there was something about increasing the number of years. Extended time you have to complete Tanzimat reforms from 20 to 30 years due to some of the GEs requiring several steps of law reform. Tanzimat used to be really hard. It used to be doable. The education one was just bait. But getting an additional 50% time, I think, makes it really easy. So Ottomans are actually going to be probably a pretty fun country for newer players now, I assume, because I think Tanzimat's way more manageable with an additional 50% time. Reduce the minting and output of gold mines by about a third. No, now we'll just still go for South Africa always, because even if it's 2/3, it's still super good. Declined, I mean, it's worse than it was, but it's still super good. Declined to pursue opium wars now angers British East India Company. Literate pops tend to strongly support movements to abolish slavery and human rights after its research. This is fantastic. I assume this is researched within a nation, not just researched in general. Reduced military and war exhaustion bonus given to Taiping, as they currently always tend to always defeat Great Qing. Okay. Reduced infamy generation against unrecognized countries from colonial offices from 50% to 25%. I think that this is not this is inconsistent with the other tooltip. I believe what's actually on live, where the other thing said 7%, I think what's actually live is 5% per level, but now civilizing mission and colonization also give a decrease. Infamy generation against unrecognized powers, and I think you can stack up a total of 60 or 65%, and of course stacking more of it has increasing marginal returns, and so overall I think that colonial offices is probably about as strong as it was before, but this and the other thing together are just inconsistent with each other, because up here colonial offices now adds 7% per level, and I think what it ends up being is 5% per level. So I think that they put in this fix first, or they put in this change first, and then they changed it from being targeting 50% with 5 full levels to targeting or 50%, 7%, that would be 35% still. Anyways, the point is this isn't telling you exactly what it is, but in-game you can change it and just know that it's been changed. But Infamy Generation being on colonization and civilizing mission text ends up so that you can actually stack more of this modifier, and stacking is what's strong because of how the math works, and so colonial offices is probably still pretty good. And I think you have to nerf colonial offices if you're going to be doing this, otherwise colonial offices would be insane. Tweaked army setup and military bonuses granted to Texas to give them a better chance to survive the Texan War of Independence. We're so back if we're playing, Native Americans, because you have to re-roll for Texas winning, and the fact that Texas is more likely to win helps a lot. Chartered companies no longer can no longer switch government principles. Okay, interesting. Slavery laws no longer directly increase the clout of landowners, as they also do so in a very significant way indirectly. Sure. Unification leadership war goals now considered. We see the little sneaky slavery buff. I can't wait for them to finally make it so you can have multiculturalism and debt slavery. Truly, I want the full capitalism experience. Unification leadership war goal is now considered to be contested if any incorporated state is occupied by the enemy. Any incorporated state. Okay, so that's a little bit of news. You don't have to take the capital. I think they also did this incorporated state business with taking war reparations. So now you can't just randomly invade Guyana and get war reparations. War goals that previously required any state to be occupied to be contested, such as war reparations, now requires any incorporated state to be contested. So now we have to go and find all the incorporated states of both France and the UK to know which ones we can occupy in order to enforce war goals. Increased aggression of Afghan countries towards Chitral. Shout out to Chitral, probably being a lot harder to play now. Afghan miners now request more aid from great powers 20 years after receiving it. Gave this culture as a primary culture, enabling them to form Afghanistan. Non-Pashtun Afghan countries will now be more aggressive towards each other. Great game passive drift now relies on the extent of a country's direct control over Central Asian and Persian states. I think they significantly nerfed the effect of prestige. Declaring bankruptcy now applies decaying reduction in welfare payments starting at 100%. So they're trying to, with a few of these, they're trying to kill the bankruptcy death spiral that the AI goes into. Declaring bankruptcy now immediately resets all institution levels to 1, which of course makes sense. This way you don't get into a bureaucracy death spiral. Removed poor laws and the government administration supporting it from China, as it's no longer needed to balance the budget and tends to result in chain of bankruptcy. Yeah, this is why China just goes bust every single game now. And they're trying to manage this here. Change the requirements in the pacification of steps to make the journal entry more feasible. Subjects, we thought it was super feasible. Subjects now require to have diplomatic autonomy in order to sign foreign investment rights and agreement pacts. Okay, you must be a non-isolationist in order to form a power block. This certainly makes sense. Sovereign empires are now only half the cohesion lost from having subjects with high liberty desire, and only from the liberty desire of their own subjects, which makes sense, not the subjects of its members. Tweak subsistence income and building throughput for decentralized nations so they don't end up with the highest SOL in the world in certain edge case scenarios. That makes sense. significantly reduced the Ericsson Company education bonus. Whoop, whoop. It used to give 10 levels, the equivalent of 10 levels of the institution of private education. Now it only gives 1, which is what it should have been all along. This has long been the most OP company in the game, and just as we're getting ready to abuse it in our Persia stream run, it does get nerfed. We were going to use it to make it super easy for us to just bink 80% literacy for the achievement for Persia, and now we'll actually have to try the game, which is unfortunate. But this should have been nerfed for like forever. This is just like it's obviously just an oversight. Like it should have always been 0.5, but it was 5, giving 5% wealth education access, which is the equivalent of 10 levels of the institution, because at level 5 you only get 2.5. So reduced leverage resistance from population by 50%, as it was too difficult to overcome in some cases with a variety of leverage sources. So it'll be easier to pull China into your block. But I don't know how doable it will be because population really hampers the leverage. Having the armed forces or authoritarian leader in government no longer sufficient to initiate the national borders of France, so I guess they don't want them going for Belgium every game. Reduced AI aggression from natural borders. Okay, so maybe the AI, if you're Belgium and you improve relations with France, maybe Belgium's really playable now. One of the reasons I haven't been recommending Belgium to newer players is because of the France's aggression, although I still think it's relatively good. Okay, interface. Added a separate tooltip description for when a building loses employees due to immigration instead of just saying they were fired. Makes sense. When inviting a prospective member to the power block, you are now given a prediction of what that will do to your cohesion. Fantastic. Still doesn't help for the case of subjugating, but okay. There's now a confirmation box when pressing leave power block. That makes sense. There's now a notification for power block members when a non-leader country leaves the block. Made sortable column. Header button sticky at the top of the market panel. Goods tab when you scroll. Okay. Building registry now filters now rows of buttons of icons instead of fold-out menus. Okay. Modding, we don't know what the modding stuff tends to do, but there have been a couple little changes. And now we have bug fixes. And to be fair, most of these are not that substantive, but there are some pretty substantive ones out there. Not as substantive as how loud the car is. Oh man, have we been blocking? Not like this. With our face. Our face is too big. No, not like this. We're like 30 minutes into the recording. Just kidding, we're like an hour into the recording. This has been a long one, guys. So we'll make our head a little bit smaller here. Okay, the truth hurts. Bug fixes. Fixing an issue. Fixing it is going to be allowed day to day because it's, of course, the 4th of July. Shout out to the British. Fixed an issue with a foreign investment that could cause invalid elements to appear and stay around the construction queue permanently. However, this will only prevent it from appearing in new saves. We are planning to introduce a save game validation for old saves in 1.7.3. Palmyra, which might be 1.7.4 now. Palmyra delineation no longer lags game. Okay. We're going to mainly look for bug fixes that are pretty important. Fix an issue where the code handles relationship between intergroups and political lobbies, which cause errors to be logged. Unrecognized powers no longer getting any benefit for infamy reduction against unrecognized modifier. This is pretty substantive, so it's harder for you to go on a rampage. Let's kind of see through. Fixed a bug where half the screen sometimes turned orange during the start of diplomatic plays. This is kind of a little bit of an annoying bug, but overall it's not too bad. Null objects to appear in exile events. Let's see. There's a couple substantive ones, but we're trying to skim through it relatively quickly because we've been going quite a while. So I'm just kind of showing where I am as I'm skimming through here. Remove duplicated overlord actions for subject. That doesn't seem too big a deal. There's a couple like really big ones. They fixed particularly the laissez-faire bug, but I don't see where it is. That's kind of one of the biggest ones. Conquering a split state now applies the state liberated rather than state conquered modifier, as the latter ended up giving tax bumps to stuff you already owned, which this is pretty big. so returning a state now doesn't like break your tax in that state for forever. So if you're playing Belgium and you conquer the Wallonia from Luxembourg, you don't randomly get like minus 100% tax on Wallonia, which kind of feels bad. Reduce the freeze during annexation caused by diplomatic catalysts. That's good. Gold fields are now always worker owned. This makes a lot of sense. They probably should have been, because it's just people going out there and just vibing, trying to pick up some gold. There's some like big ones. Removed clergymen from cotton plantations and replaced them with farmers. I feel like we might have skipped some important ones here now at this point, but here we are where we are. Blocks led by a major power, which turns into a great power, will now lose the weak block modifier as intended. That's important. Cohesion from kicking member out of your block now takes per member modifier into account correctly. They also fixed a bug where cohesion on ideological union was not working properly. Fixed a bug, this is the laissez-faire bug, fixed a bug where the reinvestment fraction of the government dividends was not calculated correctly for the building unless they had 100% government ownership. But now I think there's a new laissez-faire bug where the investment pool doesn't properly purchase buildings. Again, I think that there's a hotfix, or not a hotfix, there's someone made not a DLC, a mod out there that fixes it. Let's see. I think that that's mainly the biggest deal. Fixed a bug where treaty port status would sometimes get dropped by markets, resulting in treaty port having no effect despite showing up properly in the state. This is a big one. I've heard people talk about this. I haven't noticed it myself, but I haven't been actively like looking for it, but now treaty port should work properly. Most hills in Japan, these will no longer display as hills. Okay. I fixed an issue where Russia would start the game with 3 landlocked naval bases. I don't even know what this refers to, okay. This is kind of an interesting one. Diplomatic plays can no longer start if the initiator or the target country has no passable provinces. This does prevent you from getting locked into a forever war, but I think that the number of countries that are like this are extremely low. This is like the worst change I've ever seen Paradox ever institute. Academic caps and glasses are now restricted to characters with the relevant traits. Terrible. Let's see. I think that's kind of it for the big ones. If there's another big bug fix that I missed, I don't want to read through every single one of these for you guys. If there's another big bug fix that I missed in here, please feel free to put it in the comments, because I'm pretty sure there's like 2 or 3 big ones and we only saw 1 or 2. But other than that, of course, to all of you, I wish you a double happy Thursday. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Do the YouTube algorithm thing, but mostly double happy on this Thursday.